Maxine, your spiritual astrologer, and welcome back to the podcast, to my channel, where you'll learn how to use astrology in a more empowering and soul-centered way. Now, if you're asking yourself, what is your connection to the moon, to the lunar cycle? What is the difference between working with a new moon versus a full moon? The energetics of that, and practically speaking, what phase of the moon are we at? How do you find that out? And know what guidance that's sharing with you. How do you manifest with the moon and her rhythms? That is what we're learning about in today's episode. And it's a topic that is so near and dear to my heart. It's how I first got into astrology. It's really created so many miracles for me in my life and for my clients as well, creating everything from more abundance for themselves, reaching new milestones in their business and their goals, drawing in that soulmate for them, their perfect person, and even healing from and forgiving in ways they thought they couldn't, or getting unstuck in some sense. Even one that makes me so emotional is I've had clients who called in their rainbow babies from working with the moon and her lunar cycle and learning about this empowering cycle that you can tap into for yourself. So to manifest with this energy, I want you to know, yes, it is a fun topic to learn about, but it's also incredibly powerful and practical and just miraculous. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this lunar wisdom with you because, again, it's something that had been passed down generation to generation until it wasn't anymore. And so in many ways, I want this to be a transmission to you of really reclaiming this power, this wisdom, this lunar wisdom for yourself, and start to integrate that into your life for yourself. So before I get into it, I just want to say at the start, if you are interested in learning more astrology with me and booking a reading with me, or even checking out Spiritual Astrology School, my intensive program to learn to read charts like I do, or even my monthly moon membership, if you're interested in that as well. It's really walking you through how to manifest with the moon even more in depth. You get new videos for every new and full moon, and I guide you through more specifics of how that's lighting up your chart, what messages are coming through for you, and I guide you in a moon ritual, visualization, journaling prompts, all of that too. So all of that is going to be linked in the show notes. I also have some freebies stuff for you, so if you want to learn more, check that out or go to MaxineLuthia.com. So let's start off by talking a little bit about this lost lunar wisdom, and then I'll get into what does the moon represent, what is the lunar cycle, and what is the new moon versus full moon, because you're probably more familiar with that, but diving a bit deeper and connecting it to the whole of the lunar cycle and talking about the waxing phase, the waning phase, and all of that. So if you're watching over on YouTube, I have this little handy-dandy drawing I made for you on my whiteboard. So I'll walk you through that. But make sure you are taking notes or coming back to this because, again, it is wisdom that can really be a huge guidance system for you going forward. Okay, so first up, the lost lunar wisdom. What I mean by that is often when we're talking about the moon, we're talking about something that once upon a time our ancestors, before artificial lighting, before technology, which, I mean, thank you for the light. I'm not going to complain about a lot of that, but when it comes to artificial lighting, it's really disconnected us in many ways and cut us off from our lunar wisdom because, of course, we're not constrained to the limitations of if it's a new moon, it's dark outside, unless you have a candle and you're walking around with that. Like back in the day, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to be out and about in the world. And so really, naturally speaking, we used to celebrate with the full moons. There used to be rituals connected with the lunar cycle baked into that. It was just logical. Like you didn't have to look up what phase of the moon you were on because you just knew. You knew if it was light outside at night or not. It really determined not only your day-to-day experience, but also in celebrations and such, but also You saw that in terms of farming. You saw that in terms of migratory patterns. You saw that in terms of the waves. You can still see that with the tides, the effect the moon has in such a literal way. But even when it comes to menstruation, that also being on your moon, right? It's linked with the moon and the lunar cycle itself, that principle of the divine feminine. So there's so much more I could get into here. But when we're talking about the moon and this lunar wisdom of how to work and manifest with the moon, be in alignment with that, it is something that you once knew, that your ancestors once just naturally lived by. So as I share about this, just knowing that, as we're talking about the lunar cycle, it is something that you can even get a sense for just thinking about the symbolism of the moon. So I'll walk you through that as well. And the last thing I'll share is just, we talk about our calendar. We still see the moon and astrology and all this hidden wisdom kind of hidden in plain sight. Like we have months, right, which are about 30 days. The lunar cycle is about 30 days long as well, 29 and a half about. And we have that term month coming from moonth. Right? So again, it's all interconnected. So let's now talk a bit about the lunar cycle and what we're talking about when it comes to what that even is. So oftentimes, of course, when we're talking about the lunar cycle, luna, moon, we're talking about its 29 and a half day cycle from new moon to new moon again, right? But keep in mind, it's not just the moon we're talking about. We're talking about, with the lunar cycle, the relationship between the moon and the sun. Because when we're talking about the moon, of course, that's the feminine, yin, receptive energy. It literally is reflecting, taking in and reflecting off the light of our star, the sun. And in astrology, the sun is that opposite in many ways that complements the moon, right? So we have the masculine, the yang energy, that outrushing creative life force. So together, these two in astrology, the sun and moon, are so important, right? You likely know your sun sign and likely know your moon sign, and maybe not other planets, but you know those. If you don't, watch my other videos. But when you know the sun and moon, that allows you to have such a great guidance system in your life itself. And when we're talking about the lunar cycle, the transiting sun and moon, when we have a new moon and have a full moon, all of that, it allows you to have that guidance system. Just as the sun gives us light, gives us guidance, it illuminates our path, the moon as well. When we're working with the lunar cycle, it's showing us where are we at in this 29 and a half day cycle, and how is that symbolically and very literally in the energetics of it guiding you forward. Where do you need to be focused on now? Okay, and it's part of this larger cycle. So let me get my little my diagram for you here. So when we're talking about a new moon in astrology, that is when you can't even see the moon in the sky. It's where we have the sky dark at night. And in astrology, that's when the sun and moon meet up. They're conjunct in the same zodiac sign. Okay, so that is when, for example, let's say it's Scorpio season, we have the sun and moon both in the sign of Scorpio. So that is this huge focus, concentration of energy and life force of the sun and the moon together meeting up in the sky. So that is the new moon. It's like a lightning bolt to your chart, okay? And it creates this new start for you in some way. Oftentimes you have more planets in that sign, something like that. That's getting into another topic, but certain new moons will really ignite something for you. It starts the engine, it starts something new. So that is the new moon, okay? And the full moon, we'll talk about all of this, but the full moon halfway through the lunar cycle is that point where the moon is full, right? It's fully illuminated. So you're seeing the moon full in the sky. And it's reflecting that light of the sun so beautifully. And so this is the time where you also are illuminating some part of your life as well. You're getting a more objective perspective on something. You're seeing things more clearly. You plant a seed during the new moon where think of the black sky at that time, like fertile soil. You're planting a seed in the earth, allowing it working toward it, making sure you're watering it, you're giving it lots of sunlight. And then 2 weeks later, if you're doing that, okay, you're going to see the results of your effort. You'll see that plant in full bloom, so to speak. Whatever intentions you set at the new moon, at the full moon, you'll see how far did you get, right? And so the full moon is that time of illumination. It's where you're seeing things very clearly. And it's often more of an outward energy, more social celebratory time. Just like back in the day, right? You'd celebrate at night when the moon is full, not when you're outside like holding your candles, right? And so when we're talking about the new moon, likewise, it's dark outside. You're going to go within. You're going to contemplate, to introspect more. It's a time to be with yourself and plant those seeds for change. Reflect. What is it you want going forward? Manifesting, setting intentions, and getting really specific at the new moon is so powerful. So that is the new moon, and then the full moon 2 weeks later is that point of check-in, halfway through the lunar cycle, to see how far did you get toward those goals. Okay, and it's also a time at the full moon where you are seeing what is it that needs to be released as well. So you're getting really clear about what is working and what needs to be let go of to get you closer to that goal, kind of reaffirming, giving gratitude for all that's going right, and also seeing, okay, my commitment going forward, what do I need to let go of to get me there toward your new moon goal? Okay, so that is the new moon. And again, the new moon, that's when the sun and moon are together in the same zodiac sign. A full moon would be, let's say, during Scorpio season. The sun is in the sign of Scorpio, and the moon, when it gets opposite to the other side of the zodiac in Taurus, that would be the Taurus full moon. All right? So just to see that a full moon, the sun and moon are opposite in different zodiac signs. So that also brings a certain tension, a certain clarity there as well. All right, so that is the new moon, that is the full moon, and really I want to talk now about the in-between parts. So you can see from new moon to full moon, that's about a 2-week time span where the moon is getting brighter and brighter and brighter in the sky until it's fully illuminated at the full moon. That is called the waxing phase of the cycle, and then the waning phase is the 2 weeks that follow from a full moon to a new moon again. And that's where the moon is getting darker and darker until it gets to the dark of moon here, okay? And new moon starts again. So we have the new moon, just going through this because often it's helpful to know the 8 phases. So we have first the new moon, then we have the waxing crescent moon, then you have the first quarter moon where the moon looks like a half moon, then you have the waxing gibbous moon, then you have the full moon, then it starts the light. This is now from waxing to waning. So we have the waning gibbous moon, the third quarter moon or last quarter moon. That's again the halfway point. And then we have the waning crescent moon and then the new moon again. So understanding that these are all check-in points, but essentially if you even just know that, okay, it's either waxing or waning, that really can help you cue into the waxing phase, the first 2 weeks after a new moon. That is about going for your intention that you set. So working toward your goals, building momentum, taking inspired action each day, working toward that, being really driven and building momentum as the light is building to the full moon. Oftentimes also just to note that at the start, it's kind of like an idea at start, like the new moon. Sometimes people think, I'll get people saying, why don't they feel really energized at a new moon, like new energy? It's because it's still within you and you need to bring and draw it out as the light grows and grows to the full moon. And at the full moon, that's where it's kind of like that new beginning you may have worked to at the new moon 2 weeks ago. Finally you see that, or maybe it's a new moon many moons ago, right? You're finally seeing results at a full moon. So oftentimes it's like lower energy and it's building to higher energy at a full moon. And so at as it waxes and grows, there's kind of a check-in point here where your idea, your intention kind of gets faced with reality and that hard wall of reality sometimes. And there's oftentimes at the first quarter moon a need to really push back some resistance, or maybe there's something that failed or didn't work out right and you have to kind of like push past that, or some disagreement. There's a need to kind of grow beyond that. And then at the full moon, that's where it really things are finally, you're seeing things more clearly. Maybe you're having a realization, some aha moments can happen there, or seeing, again, what needs to change, what needs to shift to reaffirm and get back on track with your goal. And then at the full moon, then the waning cycle starts, right, where you're decreasing that light. Your energy also is dissipating. That's where it's not like you're needing to do nothing, but it's really a time to rest, a time to say, hey, you don't have to be productive all the time, right? Contrary to what society might make you believe, right, or what you've learned. Allowing yourself to rest more, allowing yourself to see where you're at and tie up loose ends at the waning cycle, but also kind of seeing how can you let yourself recuperate, how can you allow yourself to integrate and reflect on the lessons and bring that together within you and harmonize that. So it's a lot more internal at the last 2 weeks of that waning phase. And so often the last quarter moon, that's going to be kind of a point where you need to sometimes wrestle with something that maybe you didn't really want to release that, or didn't want to have to set that boundary or have that hard conversation or do that thing, but you know it's going to get you where you want to be, right? And it's going to get you closer to your goals. So sometimes that can come up there, some inner frustration often. And again, you're kind of working toward letting go to the new moon again. And emotions can come up at any point, but oftentimes if you're feeling more emotional at this waning phase, it's because you're letting something go. There's a need to kind of process that or grieve something in some sense. And at the full moon, you know, working your way up in the waxing phase, I notice it's much more about feeling a bit more overwhelmed by things, or feeling like if you haven't set a clear intention, there may be some distress there if it's not aligned. So yeah, and oftentimes too, just noting with the overall lunar cycle to kind of encapsulate this, the new moon is that time, again, you're planting the seed, you're growing it, you're making sure you're watering it, you're nurturing it, you're working toward that specific goal. And then at the full moon, with your manifesting, it's a time to see and acknowledge and appreciate and show gratitude to the universe, to the moon, to all of that for what you have accomplished and what has been going well, the insights you receive, and also what do you need to let go of and honor and let be. So that is a time to check in there. And then at the points in between, again, checking in to see, you can honestly just go on astro-seek.com. It has a moon calendar, so you can check in to see what phase are you at right now when you're watching this, and let me know in the comments how that's showing up for you. But seeing what is your intention, and how can you, at this phase in the cycle, see what point what point are you at? Are you at a point where you need to set a new intention? Are you getting close to that? Is there something that you need to reflect on with more honesty? Is there something in the waning phase that you need to let go of? Some lessons you need to reflect on and integrate? With the waxing phase, if you're in that point, what action do you need to take? What focused, inspired action, right? So seeing that and seeing how sometimes there can be conflict that can come up here, especially if you're not living in alignment with it. But also not all conflict is bad. Sometimes, especially again at those quarter moons, there is a time where you need to kind of see what you need to push past. And even the new and full moon too, okay? There's kind of, those are the 4 main points of the moon. So there's the new moon, first quarter, full moon, third quarter. All right, and what else do I want to share with you? There's so much more. But if you are even working with this, looking to see in terms of manifesting and rituals, there's of course going to be so many ways you can work with this. And I teach you all about this inside of my monthly moon membership if you are interested, but it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be a great long thing. You can spend a half an hour of really intentional meditation, and with the moon, with what's coming up for you, journaling. You can allow yourself to go on a nature walk. It doesn't have to look a certain way. I personally love to do guided visualizations during new and full moons because I have a very active mind, sometimes overactive, and I like to really pull my attention in one direction and help me with the guided visualization of words, guiding you forward to get me where I want to go and to focus where I need to be. So that's actually what I share in my membership, where I actually give you what I use, my same visualizations I'm using to allow you to work with those specific energies of the zodiac signs. So that was the other part I want to share with you, is that also in terms of the astrology, once you know this basic structure here, the next part of that is to really allow yourself to see, okay, what zodiac signs are flavoring this newer full moon? What kind of a new start do you need to be focused on? And so that's a deeper layer, and it really can stir up a lot more specifics for you as well. As well as you can even look at your birth chart and see what planets are being highlighted. This is something, again, I go through in my membership. So if you are interested, definitely check that out. But so you can get even more specific with this and see what specifics do you need to be manifesting, what can aid you there in that journey. And at the same time, knowing it can be simple. You can just allow yourself, again, to reflect, to light a candle. I should probably do a whole nother episode just on new moon rituals versus full moon rituals. But new moons are about setting your intention for the next 29 and a half days, the next really 30 days for you. And then you're staying committed to that. You can write that out. You can set affirmations for yourself, really be specific. Get someone to keep you accountable. And then you're working toward that every day and not judging yourself if you don't get it right every day, but allowing yourself to see, okay, how can I get there? How can I work with this? Okay, didn't fully get it this day. Okay, next day you're setting that intention and starting anew. And then at the full moon, you're reflecting and seeing what needs to shift, being honest with yourself, being gentle with yourself, and allowing yourself to shift in some way to be more in alignment with that. And at the new and full moons, again, you're allowing yourself to know that you are beautiful in all your phases, just like the moon herself, right? The moon isn't always a full moon, and there's beauty in all of those phases and that cyclical nature of the moon lunar cycle that's reminding us that life is, you constantly throughout life are having these opportunities to start fresh. You don't have to wait till January 1st, right? And at the same time, there's also the opportunity of knowing that you're not broken. You're in a different phase. Maybe you're having an off day. That's okay. We're human. It's part of nature. We see that in the moon cycle. We see that even with the moon, there's a different phase that we need to be at. And understanding, I think a lot of people, when I teach this, they're really on board with like the new moon, setting intentions, working toward it. But releasing, letting go, surrendering at a full moon, surrendering to something greater than yourself, be whatever that looks like to you. That's the hard part, acknowledging that there's also a time for rest. So you have the energy, the waning phase. There's that 2 weeks where you're really meant to be wrapping things up and letting yourself slow down. Whatever that looks like to you, of course, sometimes that's not always, it doesn't have to look like some ideal. It's whatever fits into your life, whatever makes sense for you and all your other things that you got going on. But allowing yourself to know that you don't have to always be productive all the time. You don't always have to be on. You don't always have to be happy all the time. You don't always have to be so rigid and expect yourself to show up in a certain way, right? And so that is the beauty of the moon. That's the beauty of working with the lunar cycle, of allowing yourself to see those shifts. And even just working with the transits, another part I'll say is when we're talking about the lunar cycle, that is understanding the transits of the sun and moon in dialogue and conversation, relationship with one another, right? The divine feminine and masculine within each of us. And when you're learning about astrology, that's a great place to start to then dive deeper into other transits, into saying, oh, okay, that's the sun and moon, but also what's happening with Saturn's transits, what's happening with Jupiter, what about Mars, all of that. So it kind of gets your foot into the door of really understanding, even at a deeper level, what those transits are all about, and seeing those cyclical nature of astrology, charting that both within the cosmos and as above, so below, as without, so within, right? That's what astrology is. It's showing you, okay, this is what's happening outside, okay, of yourself, this lunar cycle, that flow from new moon to full moon in all her beauty, but that's also happening within you constantly, right? You're not meant to be static. You're not a robot. You're allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to have emotions. That's good. It's your guidance system. And your intuition, when you work with this, you finally get to breathe. You finally get to allow yourself to feel like, okay, I'm allowing myself to manifest, and know when there's also, equally important as it is doing with the waxing 2-week phase, there's a need to reflect and pause and make sure you're not just running in the wrong direction, which, I am guilty of a lot of the times. So when you're tuning in, though, it's allowing yourself to slow down long enough to make sure, okay, am I headed in the right direction? Am I listening to what my angels are telling me, what this guidance is sharing with me? Every new and full moon, it's those check-in points. Even if your life gets super busy, you can always reset on a new or full moon. So tuning in to see, what does the universe have to share with you? Even if it's just a small little 10-minute thing, before you go to bed, or listening to a visualization, or however that shows up for you, but letting yourself reflect and tune in, because we're very often not encouraged to do that. But manifesting with the moon, with the lunar cycle, is all about slowing down, receiving. That's the moon. And allowing yourself to see, okay, where am I at in this phase? Where am I at in life? How is that guiding me where I want to go? And so knowing you're not going to try to start something new as the moon is waning, because you don't have the energy, the life force isn't building, right? If you want to go on a date, you're probably going to want to choose a moon that's growing and building, because that reflects then in the relationship of growth, of nurturing, of, building that relationship more. So understanding the lunar cycle does help you to then understand, okay, there's even more to that with manifesting, with astrology and the transits and all of that. So there's so many more layers you can dive into here, but knowing and acknowledging that the beauty of manifesting with the moon is understanding there's a need to also rest. That's just as important as doing. So the waning phase, that 2 weeks of tying things up, of allowing yourself to really get situated and have that clarity, that spaciousness that is required. You have to, back in the day when you're farming and stuff, when people were really in tune with the moon for that, and with nature and the cycles of life, there's a time to plant. That's the new moon. There's a time to water and grow and, be on it and making sure that that plant is growing. And then the full moon, that's when it's time to harvest. The fruit is ripe. But then there's the next 2 weeks where you need to allow that earth to breathe. You need to allow yourself to rest. There's a winter that you need to acknowledge and honor as well. And so I just encourage you to look up to see, what phase of the lunar cycle are you in, and how does that map onto where you're at in whatever goal you're working toward, whatever intention, who you're trying to become, what desires you want. Anything is possible, truly. If you want that, if there's a desire in you, there's a reason. There's a divine reason why you have that. You're here to really be part of something greater and to serve the world in some way. And, that might look, there's a butterfly effect, right? It doesn't have to be like being a big celebrity or something. No, it can look as simple as just really embodying your truth and being that teacher, that mirror for others, giving others permission to live in their authenticity, or whatever that looks like to you. But everyone creates a ripple effect, and you have a purpose. So knowing that the lunar cycle, wherever you're at, look to see where you are. Let me know in the comments and tell me how that maps onto what you're working toward, whether it's a big goal or if it's a small goal. There is really no big or small goals, because it's all working toward something that's even bigger than yourself. So I will leave it at that. But if you do, again, want to learn more with me, you can check out the show notes. Join my monthly moon membership. Would love to have you be a part of that. And if you're interested in booking a reading or getting my free downloadable guide, or if you really want to dive into this and transits and more and your divine timing, learning how to read charts like I do, then you can check out Spiritual Astrology School. It's really beautiful. The next semester we're going to start enrollment opens in January. So would love to have you be a part of that too, and reach out to me on Instagram if you have any questions. But thank you so much for listening, and let me know any other questions you have in the comment about the moon or any other episodes you'd like to hear from me next. Thanks so much for learning astrology with me, and until next time, bye!